There's nothing like the feeling of starting a brand new Resident Evil game for the first time. That feeling you get when you know this is going to be something you haven't experienced, but you're so eagerly anticipating it. When you finally go through the opening cutscenes, you get to the part where you eventually have to play. And this first impression is very vital, very crucial, and extremely important. Everyone wants to get off to a good start. And since Resident Evil is about a year away from celebrating its 30th anniversary, it's had a plethora of different types of opening gameplay segments throughout its history. But make no mistake, while there is many different versions of how a Resident Evil game should start, I honestly believe that there's one Resident Evil title that stands amongst all of them. As without a shadow of a doubt, the greatest opening gameplay segment of all time out of all the Resident Evil games. And it's not even close. What is up? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day. Back here with some more Resident Evil gameplay for you. And today I'm going to be explaining, in my honest opinion, why I believe that Resident Evil 2, the original one, has the greatest opening gameplay segment of all time. Now, that's a bold statement to make, considering that there's a lot of Resident Evil games out there, but I think Resident Evil 2 just stands head and shoulders amongst the rest. But in order to understand why I believe that, let's go to some of the other Resident Evil games first. I started with Resident Evil 7 as the intro because, honestly, amongst all the things I am a little bit fearful in Requiem, I am fearful of how it might start since it's one of the newer, brand new, non-remake titles. Because Resident Evil 7, in my honest opinion, probably has the worst opening gameplay segment of all. And the problem is just how long it takes to really get into anything. And yeah, for a first time, it's fine. But that's because you don't know what's going to happen. Your brain's always telling you, yeah, something's going to happen. But in reality, it's not until you finally encounter Mia and after following her for a little bit that you have any major gameplay segment happen. And to me, the problem is it shouldn't take that long in a Resident Evil game to get into it. You could still have an effective opening like Resident Evil 7 did, but it can't take, I don't know the exact time frame, but we're talking about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on if you're rushing through it or maybe you're just taking your time to really get into something really good. And I feel like that's Resident Evil 7's biggest weakness, is just starting it. Not to mention, you can't even skip the intro cutscene, which is another big red flag. And I guess they understood that was kind of dumb because they at least give you this option in the next one, which would be Resident Evil Village. And once again, Resident Evil Village has a similar problem with the exclusion that yes, you can skip the cutscenes, but it once again takes way too long to officially get started once you start controlling the game, because basically you're just walking around, putting your daughter in bed, and then having a huge long walk in the snow to show off, Ethan making a long walk. But that's my problem. These games shouldn't take that long. It's my greatest fear of Requiem, and I kind of have a feeling it'll probably go in that same direction, but hopefully it won't be nowhere near as egregious. So that's a hope for the game when it comes out next year. But let's look at some other RE titles. Starting with one of the greatest games of all time in the franchise, Resident Evil 1, or Resident Evil Remake. And this one, once again, has a great cinematic, but once you get control of the characters, I like how it starts. And I think it's perfect for this game. It's fine. It kind of gives you that feeling of every room you go into, you don't know what you're going to expect. And obviously you get the famous first zombie sequence. But as effective as it is for this game, it's just not as effective as what RE2 does. But I'm not blaming it because it is the first one in this series. And you kind of got to take that first baby steps. And for that game, I think it's perfect. You couldn't do anything better. But that's the benefits of being a sequel. The sequel always ups the ante, so it's not really Resident Evil Remake's fault. Then we get to my all-time favorite video game of all time, not just Resident Evil game, is Resident Evil 4. And I will say this right now, the gameplay sequence to start this game is genius. This whole village town section is just I'll never forget that feeling of going in here for the first time and just being surrounded by enemies non-stop on all sides, no matter where I go, and then the feeling of having that chainsaw guy rev up that chainsaw come after me. It's a thing of beauty just being completely stuck in this thing, no matter where you go, up the ladder, down the ladder, up the stairs, in the house. You're just constantly getting dogpiled by non-stop enemies. But there's just one problem, and it's why I can't give this thing the GOAT status, is because you had a little gameplay segment before you got to the town. And this part isn't bad, but it's kind of like a small segment that you use to kind of get used to the game and its mechanics, in terms of giving you some, practice against not a major amount of enemies. You get 3 here, but not really getting surrounded by all sides, but also getting used to all the materials you can get in the scavenge, as well as having a save point. Just basically like a little bit of a tutorial level, if you catch my drift. And it's why ultimately I can't even give this great segment, even though it's awesome, the best of all time in terms of the Resident Evil franchise. And look, I'm not saying that whole first segment before this area is a bad thing, but you're going to see where I get to when I get to it eventually. But it's because of that it ultimately holds back. Now, if this whole village part was the start, then we could have an argument. And maybe you can see where I'm going to this. But ultimately, I give it the ultimate sign of respect. As much as I love RE4, I have to give the greatest opening segment still to Resident Evil 2. But what did Resident Evil 2 do so differently that this one did it? Well, let's analyze Resident Evil 2 Remake, the remake of 2. And once again, this one starts out very differently from the original one. You have this little gas place segment, but I always say it's a segment that gets you used to the controls as well as the shooting mechanics, something that kind of prepares you for the rest of the game. It's a little bit of a tutorial level, if you want to call it that, but something that gets you used to how the characters move and how they eventually you're going to progress through it. But it's nothing that puts you under a lot of pressure right from the get-go, if you could kind of see my drift of where I'm going with this. And this is abundantly clear, especially when you have the part when you're in the city and you got to run away to get to the RPD. Now, I'm not making fun of anybody, but let me ask you this. How many people have ever been grabbed by a zombie in this segment? Yeah, I've still yet to be grabbed by, not unless I was doing it intentionally or on purpose, but yeah, this segment is kind of way too easy, criminally easy, especially if you have played the original one. And if you haven't played the original one, you might think, oh, this is probably just based on that, it's going to be similar to, right? Wrong. It's really night and day of how different the original one is in that opening segment compared to what the remake is. And I'm not knocking it, but I just feel like it should be a lot tougher, because I think that feeling that RE2 really nails is something that starts right from the get-go. So let's get into it. What is it that makes the original Resident Evil 2, in my opinion, the greatest gameplay opening sequence of all time? So after you get the whole forbidden cutscene of being unescapable destiny, and this is the beginning of your worst nightmare, bam, here you go. The game starts. No relaxing moments, no getting a chance to learn the controls. You're basically surrounded on all sides immediately on the first screen, and you have all these zombies slowly moving in towards you, and they're not even going to give you a chance to really learn the controls. You better figure it out, or this game's going to figure your death out real soon, and it doesn't give you that chance to even breathe or even have a relaxing moment to kind of just walk into the game. Nah, you better be sprinting and making it happen, because this game doesn't give you that chance. And that's what I love about it. You truly feel like you're in a zombie apocalypse, a city gone to hell. You're surrounded, and while the zombies move slow, those streets are slowly getting smaller and smaller as you constantly have more time pressed, and these zombies are everywhere. They outnumber you, and you might think to yourself, okay, well, clearly we can maybe shoot our way out of it, right? Well, you might want to think that, because depending on your difficulty, obviously, maybe you play on the easier ones, but I always like to play on more of the harder ones to get that true survival horror feeling, but you don't get a lot of ammunition right off the bat, so you got to be careful. You get a few rounds and a knife, so use them wisely, because when they're out, they're out. I also like this false sense of security when you go to the next sequence here with Kendo, where he locks the door and he has a weapon and he's sitting there and you find some ammunition. You're like, oh, okay, well, that's great. That's the first game was kind of tough, but bam, then you have all these zombies bust through the thing. And let me ask you this from a perspective of playing this for the first time. Did anyone go back for the weapon, or did everyone just turn and hit the door immediately? I mean, once you know you can pick up the weapon, I guess, you know, it makes sense. But for a first time playing it and not knowing, most people probably just ran out the door in just fear and terror. Just, no, I don't want to deal with that. And I also like how this whole thing continues on. It's not easy. You have so many winding hallways that seem like they get smaller and smaller, and you're encountering more and more zombies that are just basically forcing you to kind of dance right through them. But with these small areas of maneuver, it seems less and less likely you can achieve that. And while you do find a little bit more ammunition, it still doesn't change the fact that you're just kind of surrounded on all sides. And this is the opening sequence. Not to mention, another thing you might not have noticed is that there's not really any healing items. You don't really get anything. In fact, the first healing item you find in the game is all the way right outside the RPD. And that's the thing. We still haven't gotten to the legendary area of the RPD. And this sequence doesn't just last for 3 scenes. It goes on for about 6 or 7 more sequences and screens before you even get to the RPD. And I think that's the thing that sticks with me more about any of the intros in Resident Evil. It's kind of like a rite of passage, right? Like, as you keep going through more of the city, as it's been torn out, and you keep going through more sequences, through a bus, getting to the front of the RPD, it's like a rite of passage. It's like you have to earn the right to just get to the RPD, you know, the most famous location in Resident Evil 2. It's not like you're just given that. You have to earn that right. And through playing this game for the first time and not really knowing anything, not even given a chance to learn the mechanics, learn how things work, it is not an easy task. And there's no shame to admit it. How many people, you know, barely made it to the RPD the first time? Or maybe it took multiple times. And maybe multiple times you die and end up just getting beat down and mauled by the undead. That, to me, is what makes this whole gameplay sequence the greatest. It truly feels like a claustrophobic zombie apocalypse where the walls are closing in, and these zombies, they don't give you a chance to really think about it. And a lot of people are limping into the RPD, or unfortunately, they didn't have the luxury of even making it to the RPD. And it's challenging. But it's because of that challenge, it's because it doesn't really give you a chance to even breathe. It gives you just that nonstop, relentless feeling of you're constantly in a rush, you're constantly in a move. There is no safe room here. Even though one time it gave you a temporary safe room, it's just temporary with a kendo room. You don't get that safety until you finally get to the RPD. And that's what makes it feel so satisfying to me, is that you have to earn the right to get to the RPD. It's like a rite of passage. It's kind of like, you know, the game doesn't truly start till you get to the RPD, but you have to earn that. And that's why the opening gameplay segment of Resident Evil 2 to this day stands head and shoulders, in my honest opinion, as the greatest Resident Evil gameplay introduction of all time. But as I always like to say, that is my opinion. I want to hear your guys' opinion. What do you think is the greatest gameplay introduction segment of Resident Evil? And keep in mind, this isn't cutscenes. This is when you finally have control of the character. Let me know down in the comment section down below. But thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video, and hopefully I can see you guys back on the next one. Thanks, and I'll see you all later. Peace.